access and everything, and even in political representation. So I do not understand what our brother, the advocate, is saying, what rights have been taken away when vulnerable groups like women, youth, marginalized communities, and persons with disabilities have really been taken care of in the proposed draft. Thank you.
Let's come back to the panel. Yes, Paul.
Okay. I think I want to go back to the first question which was asked and which was left unanswered, and then I can touch on those other things. Specifically on the funds, I've been challenged to mention, I think we've got to recognize the fact that we did not have counties before now, so there's no way there's going to be any monies devolved to the counties. Instead, what the state has continually done over the last, I would believe, 7 years, is to set aside funds which were going to mashinani, to the constituencies, and they've been applauded as successes. Now, the issue is, once you put a specific fund in the Constitution, there's no reason given in this document to believe that any other funds will be available. On what basis would that be? Now, the 17.5% is CDF at 2.5%, local authority transfer fund at 2.5%, at 5%, other bursary funds, road maintenance levy, HIV and AIDS funds, youth enterprise fund, women fund at 10%, and that comes 17.5%. Are we saying that we are happy to have one lump sum of 15% going to the counties, which, as you know, the counties themselves have an issue. We are going to the old 47 districts, which lump together people who really do not want to develop together. They want to develop together as a country, but they don't want to be taken back to where they came from, many of them, because they wanted administration much closer to themselves, and that's why they went to get districts. But let me talk about life, because I mentioned that, and I will take the opportunity also to respond to what other freedoms and rights have been affected negatively by this proposed constitution. At 26.4.
Panel, I'm going to urge you to make it very brief, because we also have a question there from the gentleman who's also asked you, where in the current constitution does it give the right to be evicted? Yes, no, to be evicted from your property.
I'll talk about that. Thank you. 26.1, every person has a right to life. That's extremely good. That's as it should be. And that life is not given by government. It is our fundamental human right by reason of us being human. The life of a person begins at conception. That is extremely good. That is what a lot of people want to see in this country and believe. Science has already proved that. It's not whether people believe it not, science has already proved that. Number 3, which is the beginning of the worry, a person shall not be deprived of life intentionally except to the extent authorized by this constitution or other written law. There we open a door where a law could come up which in fact takes away life. Now I recognize today that courts have the power for certain offenses to sentence somebody to death. And that is very clear in the current constitution.
I'm going to stop you there for a minute, Paul, because we're going to go into a break briefly, but we'll come back to your point in a minute. But I want to ask, before we go into the break, and we forget the question from the lady there, the gentleman who asked, in the current constitution, in the proposed draft, I beg your pardon, in the proposed draft, where will the right to protection of property be? Tom there is talking as an IDP having been evicted from his property.
Could I answer that?
Yes, Asiango.
Okay. If you look at Article 40 in the proposed constitution, it deals with the right to property. And it's actually very clear on that. It includes a right to incidentally reside anywhere in this country, and it recognizes that. And it prohibits the state from enacting laws that arbitrarily deprive people. And where the state has to, in respect of public interest, acquire property. And this right to property does not only recognize immovable property, i.e. property such as land and buildings, it also recognizes intellectual property. It's in a broad sense. Where the state has to, for some reason, acquire some form of property, the state must compensate, and it must compensate people in an equitable manner. I don't want to, and just before that is the right to freedom of movement and residence, which enables people to move around the country, and the right to leave the country as well. It also recognizes and prohibits discrimination on the basis of ethnicity, of race, on various grounds, but specifically even in respect of rights to freedom of expression, it specifically prohibits expression which incites hatred against any groups of people.
We're going to go to a break in a minute, but Paul, I want to hear your point. Answer the gentleman, at what point does the current constitution allow the eviction of individuals from their property?
You want me to answer that now?
Yes.
Before the break. First, I'd like to comment on what Sangwa said. 39.3, every citizen has a right to enter, remain in, and reside anywhere in Kenya. That is as it should be, until you go to Article 63 and find something called community land. Now, community land shall vest in and be held by communities identified on the basis of ethnicity, culture, or similar community of interest. We are finding now, in 2010, in this country, if we pass this document, we will be having certain land, now called community land, which will be allocated or will belong to people on the basis of their ethnicity. Now, that causes me great concern as to whether we are bringing this country together or we are separating it. And you just need to go on to D on the following page and say, land that would be community would be land that is D2, ancestral land, and lands traditionally belonging, occupied by hunter-gatherer communities and so on. Ancestral land. Which people in Kenya can still identify the ancestral land? Are we saying there's going to be land in Kenya where you can no longer reside in, walk into, live in, purchase property because it belongs to a community identified on the basis of ethnicity, which is not your ethnicity? Where are we going with this provision?
All right, Paul, quickly, Abdullahi, because we are going to a break in a minute.
First of all, I don't think it's right for us to take some clauses in isolation, because you take one clause, you have to look at another clause that explains that. The land issue is explained in three different forms. There's private land, there's public land, and then there's community land. Now, we have to understand we have to understand we have got a huge land in this country. The occupation of different communities is different. We have got fishermen, we have got farmers, we have got pastoralists, we have got urban dwellers. Now, to answer my brother, first of all, if you own any land, it is your private property and it is your land. That does not fall within the line of ancestral land or community land. But just to give an example, where I come from, our people are pastoralists. You cross Isiolo or you cross Tana River, Garissa, and from Garissa to the Ethiopian border is 600 kilometers. From Moyale to Isiolo is about another 600 kilometers. Width is almost something like 800 kilometers. That land does not belong to any individual. It belongs to a community. And that community is the community of pastoralists, which means the pastoralists can move from one place to another place in search of water and in search of pastures. If you lock them in, that occupation is going to die, and the people who live in the rangelands are going to disappear. That is why it is called community land. It is not discriminative, even within those community lands. There are different clans who live together, and they live in a good manner without any problem between them, allowing one another to graze at one particular time when there is rain and move to the other ones, which is a different community. So the spirit, and even the letter in this document, clearly says there is absolute protection of private land. And it has clearly also stated here, every Kenyan has the right to live in every part of this country and own property. That is clearly protection for the Kenyan, irrespective of his ethnicity, race, religion, or gender.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll come back. We'll come back in a moment because we have to take a break now, but we will be back with this debate live here from Brookhouse, Nairobi. We'll now take you to the KTN studios where Michael Oyer will bring you the news highlights.